ladies and gentlemen, here I am with another show of Keeping It Real with Adi Mopidevi. This episode, I have Wesley Tucker with me. He's a fantastic person to talk to. I really loved his conversations, what we had. And yet, he's another veteran. He's worked in Army before and then moved into IT background. We had few guests before as well on our show. Again, pleasure to bring in Wesley. Currently, he's the director of IT with Root Brands, and we'll hear more from him. Wesley, thank you for being on the show. Pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me. It's my first podcast, so that's always exciting as well. So a little bit of background about myself is I was in the Army for 8.5 years. I was a communications and network engineer during that time.
Okay.
And then I transitioned out of the military and ended up getting a job as a IT director for the Root Brands, which is an e-commerce company. So we're international e-commerce and ship to, I think it's around 80 countries.
Okay. That's a lot. Just out of curiosity, what prompted your transition from a military to a civilian role?
So with the military, you travel a lot, and the constant travel, I have three small kids and a wife. And I just remember all the conversations on FaceTime and everything when I'd be traveling, especially my oldest would always say, "When are you coming home?" So I wanted to bring more stability to the homestead. So we decided that best choice would be for me to transition out of the military and ended up doing that pretty smoothly, which is not always the case. So
I'm glad
very
it worked
grateful
out for
for
you.
that.
Yeah, I'm glad it worked out for you. So talk to me a little bit about how did your leadership style or even your workmanship for that matter and your initial experiences differ in your new job when you joined?
The leadership experience didn't really change too much because I was never really that crazy NCO or sergeant that you would see in movies yelling and screaming all the time. Sometimes I would do it just to lighten the mood because I would blow something out of proportion that was really small and everybody knew I was joking. But
Uh-huh.
really, I took the thought process from the Army being a leader there to the civilian sector as well, because you're not going to be the smartest person in the room. My dad has always told me, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. I don't know if that was a shot at my intelligence or if it was great advice, but it's been good. But it's really hone in on that leadership style is I really try to take everybody's opinions
Hmm.
or input into account. And then when we're doing that, you can actually achieve really great things constantly with that because you're not just relying on your own intuition, your own experience. I've got two senior developers that are probably 40 years combined experience roughly in software development and web development. So I lean on them very heavily and definitely bring them into all the conversations when we're making decisions on what we're going to do.
So tell me a little bit about how your team responded as well to this transition and how did you embrace the technology challenges you're seeing? Talk to us a little bit about that.
So coming from more of the transport through SATCOM networking background, coming into an e-commerce company,
Mm-hmm.
that was a huge transition for me because a lot of people think, oh, it's IT is IT. There's some stark differences
Right.
between the different fields of IT. So with that, I really had to dive in and learn a lot in my off time and revamp a little bit of web development skills and then be able to really push into the new tech stacks that we're using, learning the new technologies that are there, and already knew the basic concepts that it was, but the team, I don't know, I had to earn their trust really. And so that was a bit of a transition to them as well. And so now we have a great team collaboration because they're both remote as
Mhm.
well. I'm the only IT person in the headquarters office,
Okay.
so that could be also stressful within itself because I'm trying to help lead the team in the right direction from an IT standpoint on the technical side for web development and everything and our sites. And then I'm also having to fix printers and computers.
Yeah. You're the one whose door gets knocked out the most, isn't it?
Absolutely. I don't know if it's me or finance, but I would not trade my job for the finance.
Talk to me about this. I'm sure there would have been a lot of use of AI back in your army days, regards to many areas where AI was significantly used. And you came to an e-commerce company. So what was your perspective of AI back then, and what's your perspective of AI right now?
So there is AI integrations within the military. It's a slower rollout for the military because everything has to get vetted so stringently to make sure that we can maintain the correct standards that they operate within. So I didn't have a lot of experience per se with my job in the military, but in this role, we do a lot with AI. I use ChatGPT constantly, especially when I'm building out Postgres or MySQL queries, because I know what I need to say or I know what it needs to be,
Mm-hmm.
but I just don't want to type all of it out.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm running a report on something and it's going to have a very long, drawn out
Mm-hmm.
string of emails or items that I need to input in there that I already have in Excel or something, I just copy and paste it in there and just tell it to give me that. But also, we're really seeing the integration in cybersecurity as well. That's really interesting concept. We're having AI from both sides, the security side and the potential hacking or cyber threat side as well.
Absolutely. I'll come to cybersecurity in a moment, but let's just take a minute and spend a bit of time on especially e-commerce and AI, right? How do you see AI is shaping up e-commerce sector per se? Do you see any trends? What do you see in the market, your competition, yourself? What do you see?
I know one of the major trends that we've actually come across is the use of AI for SEO.
Okay.
And where that can be good is generating those SEO top trending words, top trending subjects or terms to be able to input that into like your meta titles and meta descriptions to help boost your rankings on Google.
Mm-hmm.
But also at the same time, it's playing a little bit of a downfall because Google, for instance, has actually started punishing some of those blogs that are written and score extremely high in the AI scans. So when that happens, Google will actually have a tendency to push those down on the list versus just the organically human typed out or human written
Mm-hmm.
blogs. So that's one of the major things that I've seen while I've been working with our SEO team.
Mm-hmm. So when you're generating this kind of content, how does you actually strategize or even work with leadership to enhance your AI capabilities or AI offerings to your customers? So how are you strategizing AI investments in the next couple of years?
We do use AI chatbots. Those are getting a lot better across all websites.
Yeah.
They're starting to get a lot better. And so that's definitely an integration that we're constantly tweaking and working on is to make sure that the chatbot doesn't sound like a chatbot. Um,
Yes.
make it sound more human.
I don't know if you've seen the
Uh,
event at Dreamforce and what they're talking about customer service now. So it's fascinating. So what do you see as probably top two areas where you want to spend your money on AI in the next 2 years, if I have to ask that question?
Okay. Probably with more leaning towards something like Cloudflare, which is definitely an amazing service, and we utilize it here as well. And they lean heavily on AI for especially bot protection because there's so many
Of
different
course.
bots that can just spam or scam
Yep.
your sites. And so we really lean heavy into that. And I think that the more that they integrate there, the
Hmm.
more we'll be able to secure and also be able to push out and not have to manually push out the caching and running CDN
Yeah.
to those more remote locations from our host server.
Hmm. Hmm. Makes sense. When you're kind of looking futuristic and when you're also considering how do you go about adding more value to the customer and also to the organization, how are you actually managing your own current technical debt? Or how are you strategizing it?
Yes, technical debt. That's one of my favorite terms to use. Yeah, because if you don't pay down technical debt, then you're just going to be snowballing your way into a catastrophe.
Of course.
We really try to take on one, maybe two large to medium-sized projects at a time, because if you're really gonna take on that big of a project, you really need to be able to get it done. And also, if you're not trying to revamp the entire thing and
Hmm.
rebuild the entire thing, whatever you're going to do, it's a lot more beneficial to do those smaller batches and be able to build it, test it, deploy it, and then test it again, make sure everything's running. So it's providing benefit to the customer, benefit to the company, as well as minimizing the amount of technical debt that we can build up in that one instance.
Hmm.
I definitely love working in the agile world of technology that is today.
Absolutely. So when you have these many moving parts, right? So you have AI, you have cybersecurity, and you have, say, the technical debt, what you're talking about. And you're probably working in an e-commerce company where probably the top line is the most important thing, operations and supply chain is the most important thing, and they do what they've got to do. So how do you really position yourself and how do you communicate these things effectively to stakeholders to make sure you're managing it very effectively?
So the ability to translate between IT and non-IT
Mm-hmm.
is paramount because it really requires a lot of skill because you have some people that have never worked in IT. They
Mm-hmm.
don't understand any of the acronyms. They don't understand any of the jargon.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to break that out into more layman's terms,
Mm-hmm.
be able to communicate effectively with those higher executives. And also, you have to be able to communicate quickly with them because they don't have much time either. For instance, if I have a problem or there's an issue, I like to come in and tell them, hey, here's the issue that we found. Here is what we've done so far, and this is what or what me and my team suggest to move forward
Mm-hmm.
and prevent this from happening again or alleviate the problem that the customer has. So you got to hit those things really quick and really hard and give them enough for them to make a decision on either plan A or plan B or scrap everything and try again.
Yep, absolutely. Trying to understand, especially how are you navigating the cybersecurity space, and what advice do you have probably for someone transitioning into a similar role and understanding the balance between securing what you have, innovating with AI, and also balancing again that for cybersecurity and your operations? What advice would you have?
Cybersecurity is hard. There's a lot to it. I hired one of the top cybersecurity guys that I worked with in the Army once told me the only way to secure a network is to unplug it. And that's not very effective to reaching customers around the world on e-commerce for sure. It's definitely not effective for the Army's communication.
Yes.
You really have to stay up to date with like your top threats that are innovating and that are up and coming, and you have to be able to do those risk assessments to see if those will directly affect whatever you have in your infrastructure. And if it will, you need to come up with a plan fairly quickly. There's a lot of targets across the internet to hit, but you also don't need to take that. There's a lot of targets. Nobody's going to hit us
Hmm. Hmm.
thought process. So you have to continuously evolve with the cybersecurity. And then with AI, it's really adding to that cybersecurity threat.
Hmm.
But luck has it that we have some top companies that are actually building out great AI combative and defensive forces for us to use. Advice to everyone or anyone that wants to come into IT or cybersecurity is definitely don't be afraid, don't back down, just dive in and learn as much as you can. And it is great to have a degree in or multiple degrees and certifications. Personally, I don't have a degree in IT. My associate's degree is in precision manufacturing and machining.
Okay.
I'm in a very different world from that for sure, but some of the concepts still translate over. We really need to, or they need to be able to learn as much as possible and just be a sponge
Hmm.
and then find maybe one or two mentors. Maybe they can't teach them constantly, but they can send them links to great YouTube channels, great podcasts, to really
Absolutely.
learn what the real IT is like and then be able to get into those resources and then don't be afraid to make a mistake because honestly if you break something then you either did something wrong or you figured out a potential vulnerability.
Absolutely. The last question I have, I really like how you're putting up things in a good structure. So the last question I have is talk to us a little bit about a culture of the team, especially navigating through these kind of transitions from probably AI enabled to almost like a AI driven kind of a world. Also, complexity in cybersecurity, and you have IT is probably an augmenting arm to the frontline business. So, what is the kind of culture you would actually promote, and what is your leadership style, and what can we learn from it?
So I would say that my leadership style is still similar. Assess your team, figure out who knows what, who doesn't know what.
Hmm.
Don't put somebody on there that doesn't know what they're doing. Um,
Most important.
but you want to lean on those strengths and you want to lean on collaboration and
Hmm.
remove fear out of input or fear out of issues or faults that happen. Because
Hmm.
if you can take something that happened, especially if it's not a huge catastrophic event, and you can break that down in a collaborative way and be able to piece out exactly what happened, everybody learns from that. And you can adjust your policies and
Yes.
procedures to make sure that you can circumvent that as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. Wesley, I really appreciate you taking time and talking to us today. It's been great having you on this show. Thank you so much again for your time. It was wonderful.
Thank you for having me, Idea. It was great.
Thank you.